up, we have the incomparable Rebecca Onion, who is a staff writer for Slate. Among others, she's written for Eon Magazine, the Boston Globe, The Atlantic, Topic Magazine, PBS's American Experience website, and she's the author of Innocent Experiments, Childhood and the Culture of Public Science in the United States. In her own words, this is Rebecca, she said, or has written, "I write about the way that the past does and doesn't continue into the present." I love that line. I know exactly what you mean. And this can take many forms, many more traditionally framed histories, but also stories about the way children learn things from parents or the way people relate to their past selves. I'm inspired by old magazines, one-time bestsellers, Everybody's Forgotten. Family photographs, vintage cereal boxes, pamphlets, DVD covers. If somebody once cared about it, but it's since been left behind, I like it. Oh, what a line. Thank you, Rebecca. So delighted to have you here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Rebecca Onion.
Thanks so much for inviting me. And I'm glad that you chose that little piece to read because it's very apropos to my story. So my story is an up in smoke story about a collecting addiction that I've had to break. I can't stop buying old encyclopedias. I think it's because they're so pathetic. Old encyclopedias, they were supposed to be the kind of fount of knowledge that would carry a family through life for years. And now the relics are like complete dead weight. So I have this problem where I see them at library book sales. I spend a minute opening up a random volume. I think about the night I wrote a 5th grade paper on the Aztecs that was basically 100% copied from our old world book. I found a copy of that paper recently and it was completely embarrassing. This was long before I ever heard the word plagiarism. I think I thought that what you were supposed to do was take sections from an encyclopedia entry, put them in a new order, and add footnotes, or actually like one footnote and then a string of ibids. But I did get an A on that paper. There are dead encyclopedias lurking in most boomer parents' basements because the publishing industry had so much success selling them to Americans in the 20th century. Now, when they were first invented in the 18th century, encyclopedias were only for educated elite. In the US, reference books like encyclopedias and dictionaries were sort of luxury goods in the 19th century. By the 20th century, in North America at least, encyclopedias were like a strong middle-class social tradition. And we children of boomers had an abundance of everything, including knowledge. And encyclopedia salesmen became so common as to be the butt of some pretty good jokes. Think about the Monty Python skit where the burglar promises the woman he's a burglar, not an encyclopedia salesman, so that she'll let him in the door. And then when he gets in, he starts on his pitch. Now that pitch, if you want to get ahead, you'll invest in the set, was annoying, but it also tugged at some serious anxieties. So I like this book from this ad from 1961 for a World Book Encyclopedia that I found when I was doing research on a different topic in old parenting magazines. It had a feminine hand grasping an order form like she's poised on the brink of a decision. And it said, "You are holding your family's future in your hands." And there are encyclopedia ads like that all over parents' magazines from the 20th century. So part of what I think grips my heart when I see these sets at library sales and yard sales is imagining all the moms and maybe dads also who bought sets like that, who had all these same kinds of fears that haunt parents of my generation who might buy wooden toys or sign people up for lessons. This is the same idea. I should buy my kid whatever it is that might be enough to help them, just in case. Now, of course, when people got personal computers in their homes and then the internet, the print encyclopedia was soon dead. Now, why does this feel like such a tragedy to me? And why do I devote so much shelf space to encyclopedias that I shouldn't? Because of course, now that, I got all this expensive education, I know how encyclopedias are so full of ideology while pretending to be neutral. And there is some advantage to the way we perceive authority now as like a distributing, ever-evolving web of edits and updates performed by self-appointed experts that sometimes you should trust and sometimes you shouldn't, and part of the game is figuring out who it is. Instead of this just going straight to one set of volumes and reading about one thing and knowing that that's it. But even though I know that we're probably better off now, I think we're definitely better off now, I still can't stop buying them. I started following the work of two artists, one named Brian Detmer and one named Guy Laramé, a couple years ago. And I'll put some links to their work in the chat. Both use old encyclopedias as fodder for art. Now, Detmer explodes encyclopedias. He takes pictures, illustrations, scattered words out of their interiors, puts them on display in new configurations. When you look at his pieces, you get some of that same feeling of endless browsing. You catch your eye on one image, then another, and in fleeting impressions, you get a sense of the kind of world the encyclopedia portrayed. And Laramé, on the other hand, approaches the books as objects. He leaves them closed and monolithic, uses them as kind of building blocks. Their art and words are lost to the viewer. Sculpted into landscapes, they transcend their form, becoming something totally new. I interviewed both of them a while ago for a piece, and I think there were conversations in which I learned something really deep about nostalgia. Detmer said, "The encyclopedia's purpose is to be a representation, a reflection, a mirror of the entire world. Its relevance and functionality depends on the world staying fixed. It began as the perfect companion," which he says is a term that people often used in the titles of encyclopedias. "But the more progress and change that happens in the world, the quicker the encyclopedia becomes irrelevant or useless. It becomes the pathetic half of a withering marriage, a partner that's unable to change. I think that's where the pathos lies. A set of encyclopedias is a reminder of a time in our lives when it was full of life and essential. It completed us, but was unable to grow with us." I love artists because how perfect is that? He said, the pathetic half of a withering marriage, a partner that's unable to change. Now this, I think, is why I feel somewhat childish buying all these encyclopedias. The kid I was when I spent hours immersed in them is gone. I can't ever get back that frame of mind that approaches reference books as a simple portal to the world, now that I know how confusing and messy the world truly is. Detmer also said to me, "We're all much better off having access to information the way we do now. In most cases, it would be anachronistic to pretend we need encyclopedias to research a subject. That is, as long as we have a constant flow of electricity. We have now shifted all of our personal and cultural records to a media dependent on constant access to power, and all of our information is on life support." Now, I think this is something else about my encyclopedia fixation. Another deep interest of mine is post-apocalyptic fiction. And I imagine that one day, if the power goes, my own daughter will descend to our basement and get lost in outdated reference books, trying to figure out how to skin a deer, or maybe, if she's in a more expansive state of mind, what life is like across the world. Except the entry about what life is like across the world will be, of course, totally outdated and was probably racist to begin with. I think there's some part of me that just wants to have it there on the shelf. There's a deep reserve in me that was born in the 20th century and will probably never escape it. Guy Laramé said in a phone conversation, "There was a sort of authority to the encyclopedia that we're losing a little bit, for better or worse. The authority, at least, would provide us with some sort of reference. This is the state of things. The imperialist or colonialist aspect of social science has been questioned, and that's for the good. But we're all left quite lost as to what are the reference of our lives." The encyclopedia, I think, thinking about what he's saying, is like a grandfather who hasn't read a new book in years. This grandpa tells a story from his youth, self-assured and confident. I imagine myself sitting at the encyclopedia's feet, loving it for having always been there and hating it for how sad it makes me feel, how its growing inadequacy shows me the impermanence of all things. It's what Laramé said next that got me to consider leaving some of my volumes on the curb, which I finally did recently. I asked him about his own sadness, destroying encyclopedias to make his work. I said, "Does it make you sad to do this?" Basically, he's taking tools to encyclopedias and making them into something else. And he said, "The print encyclopedia is gone. Adieu, farewell. But what I find is this is a beautiful word, adieu. It's really hard to say it with anger. It's hard to say, adieu, like, go away. That's not the way we see it. We fill it with nostalgia. Well, it's gone. So bad. I had a good time with you and it was a part of my life, but it's gone. Adieu means to God. So you send it back to God."